Scott just made the point.
Jefferson seems to be a lot more secure, not just.
Good news, everyone. Well, not great news, but less bad news than we're used to getting these days. A survey by the Pew Charitable Trust show more and more young people are making a decision to live out in the country. Although this idea is so repugnant to people writing magazine articles that they never really refer to it as the country, but rather as the exurbs. Exurbs presumably being the vast wasteland that connects the outer suburbs of one city to the outer suburbs of the next city. Now, anyone who's ever flown over this country from end to end knows that there's a lot of exurbs out there. So joining us now to develop this wilderness of an idea, to chop down its trees, to mine its precious resources of fact, and to dump rhetorical mercury into the exurbs rivers of opinion, are fellow pioneers Steve Green and Scott Ott. Welcome, gentlemen. There they are. Guys, gentlemen, frontier gentlemen, I think this is good news for reasons that I will elucidate at the end of this program, and how, yes, there will in fact be math involved. Now, Steve, we all three of us grew up in a time when education was so much deeper and wider than it is today. So we all three recall from our youth that epic battle of ideas, one of which was summed up as Green Acres is the place to be. Farm living is the life for me. Land spreading out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me that exurb side. Now, you lived in both places. Steve, does exurbia lead to a more conservative and sensible lifestyle?
You know what? Yeah, I grew up in the St. Louis suburbs, but I also lived in St. Louis's Central West End, which is, in the heart of the city. And I spent some time in San Francisco as well, in the Tenderloin, which is, well, if you're looking for drugs and hookers, that's your part of San Francisco. It was an education for a Midwestern boy. But now I live in Woodmore, Colorado. It's part of the monument area. It's actually 3 little bedroom towns. You got Palmer Lake nestled right up against the front range of the Rocky Mountains to the west. You got Monument, which is kind of our downtown. It's right along I-25, and Woodmore is just. It's so beautiful. It's wooded hills. It's windy little lanes. It's real houses, and it's a real community. My neighbors are terrific. One of my next door neighbors, we meet each other every Tuesday morning, taking the trash out to the end of the driveway, and we talk about what books we're reading. We trade some history books, and just nice, friendly community. And when we were talking about this over the phone yesterday in our conference call, I started to wonder, I've lived here 8-9 years now, and I know so little about my actual town. Not the people, I think I know them, but the actual town. So I went to Wikipedia, and I pulled up some stuff, and between our 3 little bedroom towns here, you've got a population of, I think 17, maybe 18,000 people, if I had to guess. The census data's outdated, and we've grown some. So under 20,000 people, I'm pretty safe in saying, but of those 20,000 people, you got about 2,500 households, and almost half of those households have children. So half your households have children. It's very family oriented. Only 3.4% of those households are apparently single moms. 85.9% are married couples living together. Just families, husband, wife, children together in the same house. Of course we're happy. Of course we're looking after each other. Of course it's a real community, because community starts right there around your own kitchen table, and we still know how to grow those in the exurbs. It's a wonderful thing.
Well, Scott, let's turn to you, because we know that deep down, no, New York is where you'd rather stay. You get allergic smelling hay. I know you just adore a penthouse view. Exurbs, you love them, but Scotty, give you Park Avenue. Now, that you live in you've been forced to live in the exurbs. So when facing the question, Scott, of what could possibly go wrong by having a huge infection of trigger warning millennials move into exurbia, what could possibly go wrong, Scott?
Well, I was going to say at first that, the good part is that this nation really was founded around a more agrarian concept of what the United States of America looks like. The population was relatively spread out. Our biggest city in the late 1700s was Philadelphia, with, around the time of the Constitution, I believe it had about 40,000 residents. That was the megalopolis of its time. But a lot of the ideas, for example, that Thomas Jefferson talked about were really, they had in mind that everybody could go out and get his little half acre or 10 acres or 100 acres of land. And it's really built around that idea of individual liberty and the ownership of property. And the industrial age required us to clump together in order to provide the fodder for the factories. And now that we're moving into the information age, we don't have to all live together anymore. We don't have to be piled on top of each other like anthills. You may be surprised, though, my urban friend, that when you move out to the exurbs, which we used to just call the country, there's probably Wi-Fi at the feed store. And not only that, the local farmer is driving around in a tractor that's worth more than your Maserati. And in addition to that, he can command that tractor from his iPad with no driver in it and set the pattern that it'll cover on the field. And then he, like Lone Ranger used to whistle for his horse, he can call it into the barn at night. There is amazing stuff going on out in the exurbs, and we welcome you former city dwellers in it. But when you come here, remember there was a reason why you escaped there. Try to embrace this new life.
In other words, pull your damn pants up. You know, so many of the problems with America, are the problems of urban living being enforced on the rest of this country. These urban values, things like socialized health care, that's a city problem. Mass transit, speed, rail, high-speed rail, that's a city problem. All of this stuff, these ridiculous environmental controls. I'm not talking about stopping people dumping mercury into the river, but ridiculous environmental controls, zoning, all this other stuff, restrictions on noise and drones and what you can do and can't do. It's all part of the city. So let me just tell you one thing that's very interesting about living out in the country. In the country, if something goes wrong, you have to ask a friend to help you change a tire. And a friend could be somebody you don't know very well. You just wave your hand and they'll pull over and you'll learn some interesting values. But I told you there'd be some math involved, and there is some math involved. There's a very interesting, extremely informative thought experiment called the prisoner's dilemma, and it describes how people interact with each other. The idea behind the prisoner's dilemma, just look it up on Wikipedia, I don't have time to explain it right now, is that two convicts are being interrogated in separate rooms, and the idea is that if you rat out the other guy, you've got a better chance of getting out with a good outcome than by basically being quiet. Now, if it turns out that when you play the prisoner's dilemma, ratting out the other guy wins every time, it is by far the safest and best way to play that game. Computers play this millions of times. But, when you play something called the iterated prisoner's dilemma, it's slightly different. In the iterated prisoner's dilemma, you are playing against the same opponent, and what they did last time affects how you're going to deal with them this time. What am I making a point about here? What I'm making a point about is in the iterated prisoner's dilemma, the opponent has a reputation. And if the opponent has a reputation, then screwing the other guy is no longer the best policy. The best policy is tit for tat. You do to them what they do for you. And over the long run, the better you treat that person, the better you get treated yourself. In the country, you see, you will see that person again if you decide to cut them off in traffic or flip them over a bird over something that they didn't deserve to get. It's a better way to live. It makes life a little bit more conservative. But if you want to know what the best part about the new exurbia, it's kind of like what Scott was talking about, Wi-Fi and especially drawing young people, retail outlets. Yeah, retail outlets out there in country. Seriously. Da-da-da-da-da, the chores, da-da-da-da-da, the stores, da-da-da-da-da, fresh air, da-da-da-da-da, Old Navy Square. Not just
Here's the place to be. Farm living is the life for me. Land spreading out so far and wide. Keep Manhattan, just give me that countryside.
New York is where I'd rather stay. Get allergic smelling hay. I just adore a penthouse view. Darling, I love you, but give me Park Avenue.
Works for me. For PJTV, Steve Green and Scott Ott, I'm Bill Whittle. We'll see you next time. I got to get on my tractor and fix that place up. It's a dump.